In this first video, I'm going to show you how to make an initial conversion from a PDF file to a docx file. This process should be familiar to those of you that have done initial conversions for alternative format before, as it's essentially the same conversion process. We're going to need to do a little more editing in this initial conversion to prep the document for Braille translation, and especially for this book, since the one I'm going to show you is a math textbook. For any humanities, history, English, any textbook that's solely text, this process is going to look a little simpler. But for math, we're going to eventually need to use both grade 2 Braille as well as Nemeth Braille. So a little extra work done in this initial conversion is going to make our lives a little easier when we are actually Brailing. So the first thing we need to do is find our PDF file in the drive and download it. So I'm over here, Module 2, Unit 1 for this example. Once we open up our PDF file, we need to make sure we're in Acrobat Pro or any Adobe Acrobat file. Just watch out for that one, especially if you're using a Mac. The default program tends to be Preview. We want to be using Acrobat for this conversion. Once we're in Acrobat, we're going to go up to File, Export to, Microsoft Word, and then Word document. We can rename it and save it where we want to. I'll just throw this on the desktop for now and go ahead and click Save. I've already done this before, so yes, go ahead and replace that. It's going to pre-process. It opened up on my other screen. There we go. Alright, so once we are in Word, we have this version that looks very similar to what we had in the PDF, and that's not quite what we want. So we're going to click anywhere and we're going to select all, so you can either click right click and then I guess we don't have it on Mac, but I know there is on Windows users, but we can just hit either Control A if you're on a Windows or Apple A if you're on a Mac, and then we're going to cut the whole thing. You can do copy and then delete if you want, but it's easier to just cut, so that's Control X or Apple X. From here, we're going to want to right-click so that we can paste special. It looks similar on the Windows. Basically, what we want is we want that unformatted text. So we don't want it to already be in tables. We don't want it to already have little images. We just want that plain text out. And so once we paste that, we'll have something that's a little like this. Now, this is kind of a mess. So here's where we're going to take this step a little further than what we would normally do with initial conversions for alt format work, and we're going to clean this up a little bit. So this step right here is kind of your first step you'd be doing if you're doing initial conversions, and so we're going to use a lot of find and replace. Now there's a couple of big ones that I always do first. First thing I like to do is like to get rid of those tabs, so I'm going to replace my tabs, and you can do that with a *T. I'm going to just replace all those with spaces. So I'm going to go through and replace all, and that's already looking a little better. Next thing I like to do is I change my double spaces to a single space. And we might need to do that a couple times because there's usually a lot of those. I'll keep doing that a couple more times. The next thing I want to do is condense down those paragraphs. So I do this in a couple different steps. The first thing I do is *P is my paragraph marker, and then a space. I'm going to replace all of those with just a single paragraph. That gets rid of all these little spaces before the paragraph, so I'm going to replace all those. Next one's kind of similar, where I'm going to do a space and then the paragraph marker. That's all these guys, and that just cleans up the ends there. And then to condense down the paragraphs, I'm doing double paragraphs, and we're going to need to do this a couple times because it usually takes a couple chunks. So click replace all a couple times, and now we have a much cleaner document that has not so many of the big spaces. Now, the next thing I'll do is I'll just kind of flip through the PDF initially and see if there's any big, obvious things that I know aren't going to convert well. So I might be looking for equations, I might be, these fractions are going to be a little messy, but I can deal with that later in the actual Brailing project. Since we copied the plain text, we don't have to worry about the images. We can take care of those later during the embossment process. I think the biggest thing we need to worry about here is how do our minus signs look. So let's go back to our Word document and look for some of those subtraction signs. Sometimes we get them to print in nicely with just the dash that we want, and sometimes we get a long dash. So I'm going to copy this long dash, and I'm going to replace all those with just a single dash. This will be useful for our translation software later, so I think there's a lot of those. Scrolling through, not sure if all these TIs are. So we can look at, you see these, let me zoom in a little bit here. Thank you. All right, so we see how we have a space comma. We know we're not going to want any of those, so we can replace all the space commas with just a single comma. And if that did that with commas, I'm guessing it's going to do that with periods as well. So space period replaced with just a single period. It looks like there's one of those, but it's still useful. Scroll through again. We don't want any of these underscores, so we can take our underscore and replace with nothing. There's only 2 of those, but it's still a good thing to get rid of. I don't see any other big things. What are these TIs anyways? Let's take a look at those. So you might look for things that just look weird. You'll be like, I don't know what that's actually using. Okay. Deltas. We can leave those for now. We'll figure out what those need to be when we're actually converting in Braille later. So other than that, we have a pretty clean initial conversion now at this point, and we are ready to translate it into ACSHI characters. So the last thing I need to do, go up to File, Save As. Actually, I'll keep that name, so it's just save. So we're ready for our ACSHI conversions now.